Welcome to our deep dive today. We're going to be looking at Alan Watts' The Wisdom of Insecurity.
Such a fascinating book.
It really is. It's a philosophical exploration of anxiety and how ideas from Eastern philosophy can help us, sort of understand and deal with that anxiety in the modern world. But for this deep dive, we're going to be focusing specifically on this theme of awareness that Watts presents
Okay, yeah.
throughout the book. So let's dive right in.
Sounds good.
So one of the first things that Watts discusses is this really interesting idea that our feeling of being separate from the world, from everything around us,
Right.
is actually an illusion
Yeah.
created by our own minds.
It's a really powerful idea, isn't it?
It is. It's like we forget that we're part of this much bigger thing,
Yeah.
because we're so caught up in our own thoughts.
Yeah, exactly.
But how does this illusion of separateness, how does that actually lead to anxiety?
Well, Watts argues that if we believe we're separate, we constantly strive for this kind of future state of security and happiness. So you're on this journey, always trying to reach some kind of distant goal, instead of just being present in the experience itself.
I love how he uses that journey analogy.
Yeah, it's very visual.
He says we see life as, going from birth to death with this destination to reach
Right.
instead of like experiencing it like a flowing river.
Yeah, that's a much better way to visualize it, I think.
Yeah. And because we're so focused on that destination, we miss the beauty of the journey itself.
Totally. We miss out on the present moment.
Yeah. So Watts also distinguishes between thinking and awareness, which I found really interesting.
That is a fascinating distinction.
What is he, how does he define those terms?
So he defines thinking as using language and symbols and concepts to make sense of the world.
Okay.
It's how we kind of analyze and categorize things.
So thinking, it sounds like thinking can actually trap us in a way.
It can, because it's like putting a filter on our experience.
Okay.
Whereas awareness is more about experiencing reality directly.
Without that filter.
Can you give me an example of what that kind of awareness might feel like?
Sure.
Yeah.
Imagine you're listening to music,
Okay.
but you're not labeling it. You're not analyzing it.
Right.
You're not comparing it to other music you've heard.
Okay.
You're just completely absorbed in the sound, in the feeling, just the pure experience.
Yeah.
That's a glimpse of awareness.
It's like being completely present in that moment with the music.
Exactly.
He even tells a story about someone mistaking a rope for a snake in the dark
Yeah.
to illustrate how thought can actually distort our perception of reality.
Yeah. I think that story perfectly encapsulates how our thoughts, especially fear-driven thoughts, can lead us astray. It shows how we can create these illusions of what the world is.
Right. It's not always what our minds make it out to be.
Exactly.
So how does this then relate to time?
Okay, so this is where it gets really interesting. Watts argues that our obsession with the past and the future is another trap.
That prevents us from experiencing the present moment.
So, with regret and worry.
Exactly. We're always somewhere else in our minds, rather than where we actually are.
Yeah. So, what can we do about that? How can we break free from that trap?
Watts, drawing on Zen Buddhism, suggests that practices like meditation and mindfulness
Okay.
can be really powerful pathways to cultivating awareness.
So it's about training the mind to be more present, to be aware of what's happening right now.
Exactly. And this is where that concept of the wisdom of insecurity comes into play.
That sounds a bit paradoxical. How can insecurity be wise?
Watts argues that by accepting the inherent insecurity of life, by letting go of our need to control everything, we can actually find true peace and joy.
So by acknowledging that everything is always changing, we can actually find freedom.
Precisely. He's not saying we should be reckless, throw caution to the wind.
Right.
But rather it's a shift in perspective.
Okay.
It's about learning to dance with uncertainty instead of clinging to this illusion of security.
Yeah. And he gives some practical techniques for cultivating this awareness, right?
He does. One simple exercise he suggests is focusing on your breath.
Okay.
Noticing the sensations in your body.
So it's about grounding yourself in the present moment through physical sensations.
Right. It's a way to anchor yourself in the here and now and to break free from that whirlwind of thoughts.
It's like hitting the pause button on the mental chatter.
Exactly. And in that pause, you might find a sense of peace that you didn't even know you were seeking.
I think it's interesting to consider Alan Watts himself for a moment.
Yeah.
His background is quite unique, isn't it?
It is. He was a British philosopher. who became kind of a leading interpreter of Zen Buddhism for a Western audience. So he was really bridging these seemingly disparate worlds.
And that probably explains why his writing feels so relatable.
Yeah, I think so.
He can take these complex philosophical concepts
Mm.
and make them really relevant to our everyday lives.
He really had a talent for that. His work is a testament to the power of clear communication.
Yeah.
He could explain these profound truths
Right.
in a way that was accessible and even humorous.
It's like he's having a conversation with you, sharing his insights,
Yeah.
and inviting you to explore them further.
That's a great way to put it. He wasn't interested in preaching or dogma. He really just wanted to spark curiosity and encourage people to think differently.
And I think his work definitely does that. But before we get too deep into Watt's biography, let's unpack some more of his ideas about awareness.
Okay, yeah. What else did you want to talk about?
One of the things that really stood out to me was this idea that our constant pursuit of security might actually be making us more anxious.
That's a really insightful observation. It seems counterintuitive, doesn't it?
It does. Because we crave security.
We do.
We think it's going to bring us peace.
We think it will.
But Watts argues that it's actually a trap.
It is, because it keeps us from fully experiencing the present. We're always in this state of not yet, waiting for something to happen. That will finally make us happy.
Right. And that something never seems to come. Or if it does come, it's very fleeting.
Right, because then we're immediately looking for the next thing to satisfy us.
Exactly. It's just a never-ending cycle of desire and dissatisfaction.
Right.
And Watts suggests that true happiness and peace, they come from embracing the present moment with all of its imperfections and uncertainties.
Yeah. Which is a pretty radical idea when you think about it.
It is.
Our whole culture is based on striving, achieving, acquiring, always reaching for something more.
It's constant wanting and grasping.
So how do we put this into practice? I mean, it sounds great in theory, right?
Yeah.
But how do we shift from that mindset of constant striving to one of acceptance, especially in our busy modern lives?
That's the million-dollar question, I think. Watts doesn't offer any easy answers, but he does point to practices like meditation and mindfulness
as ways to cultivate that awareness and that present moment focus. He stresses the importance of paying attention to simple things, like your breath, the sensations in your body, the sounds around you.
It's about becoming more attuned to the present moment,
Yeah.
through our senses.
Exactly. It's a way to step out of that mental chatter and connect with the immediacy of experience. And in doing so, you might start to notice that there's actually a lot of joy and peace to be found in these ordinary moments.
It's about finding those little moments of joy and peace in everyday life.
Yeah. It's amazing how it all comes back to this,
It's like all these different paths, all leading up to the same summit. And one of the things that I find so compelling about Watts is that he's able to draw on such a wide range of sources and traditions. He's
really is.
blending Eastern philosophy with Western psychology.
Yeah.
He's got a little bit of humor in there, and even poetry.
He was a really one-of-a-kind thinker.
He was
his work has this incredible depth, but he presents it with such clarity and wit that it never feels overwhelming,
I have to say, exploring the wisdom of insecurity with you has been a real eye-opener.
I'm so glad to hear that.
His insights into awareness and the illusion of separateness and the nature of the mind, they're incredibly thought-provoking.
His work can be quite transformative if you're open to it.
It can.
It challenges us to think differently about ourselves and the world around us.
It makes you wonder what would happen if we could, fully embrace this idea of interconnectedness, this letting go of the ego and the illusion of separateness,
That's a profound question. I think Watt suggests that it would lead to a more compassionate and understanding way of being in the world.
Because if we truly see ourselves as part of something larger, then harming others is like harming ourselves.
Right.
It dissolves those boundaries that we often erect between us and them.
Exactly. And it opens up the possibility
Yeah.
for deeper connection and empathy and even love.
I'm also curious about what Watts has to say about the role of awareness in dealing with suffering.
Okay.
After all, he titled the book The Wisdom of Insecurity.
Yeah.
Suffering is a big part of the human experience.
It is. Watts doesn't shy away from that reality at all.
Right.
In fact, he argues that suffering is inevitable. It's part of the fabric of life.
He's not saying we should just resign ourselves to a life of misery.
No, no, not at all. He's saying that the way we relate to suffering
Yeah.
is what determines our experience of it.
Okay.
So if we resist it, try to push it away,
Hmm.
cling to the idea that, life should be free from pain, then we only amplify our suffering.
It's like struggling against the current of a river instead of letting it carry us.
That's a perfect analogy.
Yeah.
Watts suggests that by cultivating awareness, we can learn to observe our suffering without judgment.
Okay.
Without identifying with it as mine, we can see it as a temporary state, like a passing cloud.
So it's not about denying our pain,
No.
but rather changing our relationship to it.
Exactly. And in that space of acceptance, we might find a sense of peace even amidst the storm.
Okay.
Like the eye of the hurricane,
Yeah.
a place of stillness at the center of the chaos.
This idea of acceptance is a recurring theme in Watt's work.
It is.
It seemed to suggest that acceptance is the key to unlocking true freedom and joy.
Absolutely. And it's not a passive acceptance, a resignation to fate.
Right.
It's an active embracing of what is,
Yeah.
a recognition that life unfolds as it should, even when it's not what we want or expect.
And by accepting what is, we free ourselves from that struggle of trying to control everything, of resisting the natural flow of life.
Precisely, we surrender to the river, allowing it to carry us where it will, trusting that even the rapids have a purpose.
And this trust, that this surrender is ultimately an act of faith, not a religious faith,
Right.
but a faith in the wisdom of life itself,
A faith in the interconnectedness of all things.
in the inherent goodness of the universe, even in the midst of pain and suffering.
This brings us back to the power of awareness.
Yeah.
It's through awareness that we can cultivate
Mm.
this acceptance, this trust, this faith.
Exactly.
By being present in the moment, by observing our thoughts and feelings without judgment,
Yeah.
we can begin to see the world with new eyes.
It's like we're waking up from a dream,
Yeah.
seeing reality with a clarity and vividness that we never knew possible.
And this awakening, this shift in perspective can be profoundly transformative.
It can change our relationships, our careers, our entire way of being in the world.
It's not about becoming a different person,
Right.
but rather discovering who we truly are beneath those layers of conditioning and ego.
It's about stripping away the illusions
Yeah.
that keep us separate, that keep us afraid, that keep us stuck in those cycles of suffering.
And stepping into the fullness of our being.
Yeah.
Embracing the present moment with all of its beauty and challenges.
That's the essence of Watt's message.
Yeah.
And it's a message that continues to resonate with people from all walks of life, even decades after his death.
But before we conclude, I'd like to go back to something you said earlier about Watt's work being transformative. If you're open to it.
Yes, and that openness is key.
Yeah.
It's about approaching his ideas with a sense of curiosity,
Yeah.
a willingness to explore new ways of seeing and being.
Because if we cling to our old beliefs, our preconceived notions.
We close ourselves off
Yeah.
to the possibility of transformation.
It's like trying to fit a square peg into a round hole.
Exactly.
We have to be willing to let go of what no longer serves us, to embrace the unknown,
Yeah,
even if it feels uncomfortable at first.
it might.
I think that's a really valuable insight
Yeah.
for anyone engaging with Watt's work, or really any kind of philosophical exploration.
Absolutely.
It's about approaching these ideas with an open mind and a willingness to challenge our own assumptions. And in that challenge, in that questioning, lies the seed of true growth and understanding.
And speaking of growth and understanding,
Yeah.
I'm curious about how Watt's ideas about awareness might apply to
Yeah.
personal growth and self-development. A lot of people are seeking ways to improve themselves,
Right.
to become better versions of themselves.
That's a great question, and it connects really beautifully to the core principles that we've been discussing. Watts believed that true personal growth stems from a deep understanding of ourselves,
Okay.
and that understanding can only be achieved through awareness.
So instead of focusing on external goals or achievements, we should first turn our attention inward.
Precisely. It's about becoming aware of our thoughts, our feelings, and motivations. Understanding the patterns and conditioning that shape our behavior.
It's like shining a light into the dark corners of our minds. Seeing those hidden beliefs and assumptions
Right.
that are really driving our actions.
And once we see them clearly, we can begin to challenge them,
Yeah.
to rewrite the scripts that no longer serve us. That's where true transformation begins.
This reminds me of something Watt said about the ego, how it's constantly striving
Yeah.
for something more, something better, but never quite finding satisfaction.
He argues that this relentless striving stems from a fundamental misunderstanding of who we are.
Right.
We're trying to fix something that isn't broken to improve something
Yeah.
that is already whole and complete.
So it's not about becoming someone else,
No.
but rather remembering who we truly are beneath those layers
But
of
like,
ego and conditioning.
But that's the essence of it, and that remembering, that rediscovering of our true nature can only happen through a process of deep introspection and awareness.
And it's through this process of self-discovery
Yeah.
that we can find true fulfillment and happiness, not in the pursuit of external goals, but in the realization of our own inherent worthiness.
It's about shifting from a mindset of scarcity to one of abundance, recognizing that we already possess everything we need to be happy and whole.
And this shift in perspective, this realization of our own innate wholeness, can be profoundly empowering.
It can free us from the need to prove ourselves,
Yeah.
to compare ourselves to others,
Yeah.
to constantly strive for something more.
It allows us to embrace who we are, flaws and all,
Yes.
and to live with a sense of authenticity and purpose.
And that authenticity, that alignment with our true selves can ripple outward,
Yes.
inspiring others to do the same. It's like a chain reaction of self-discovery and awakening.
It's a beautiful vision of a world where people are no longer driven by fear,
Right.
insecurity,
Yeah.
and the need for external validation, but rather by a deep sense of inner peace and interconnectedness.
And Watts believed that this vision, while ambitious, is not unattainable. He saw it as a natural progression of human consciousness, a gradual awakening to the truth of who we are.
And this awakening, he argued, it's not something that happens overnight.
Right.
It's a journey.
It is
The process of continual learning and growth.
a journey that requires patience, compassion, and above all, a willingness to look within, to confront our own shadows and to embrace the full spectrum of our human experience.
This brings us back to the book's title,
Yeah.
The Wisdom of Insecurity.
It's in that space of uncertainty, of not knowing that we have the opportunity to discover who we truly are.
Because it's in the letting go, in the surrendering to the unknown,
Mm-hmm.
that we open ourselves to the possibility of something new, something greater than ourselves.
It's like we're stepping off the edge of a cliff, trusting that the net will appear.
And that trust, that faith is what allows us to soar.
Beautifully said.
It's incredible how Watts is able to weave all these complex ideas together,
He did.
from Eastern philosophy to Western psychology,
Mm-hmm.
and present them in a way that's both
Yeah.
profound and accessible.
I think he had a real knack for connecting with people, for
Right.
making these ancient wisdom traditions relevant to modern life.
And one of the things that really stood out to me in The Wisdom of Insecurity
Yeah.
is his emphasis on the importance of playfulness and humor.
Oh, absolutely. That's such a crucial aspect of his work, and it often gets overlooked.
Yeah.
He saw playfulness and humor as essential components of a truly awakened life.
It's like he's reminding us not to take ourselves too seriously,
Yeah.
to find that joy and lightness,
Yeah,
even in the midst of life's challenges.
exactly. He believed that when we loosen our grip on the need for control,
Yeah.
when we allow ourselves to be more spontaneous and playful,
Yeah.
we open ourselves up to new possibilities, to creative breakthroughs, to a deeper experience of life itself.
It's about embracing the absurdity of it all,
Yeah.
finding the humor in those unexpected twists and turns that life throws our way.
And in that laughter and that
Yeah.
letting go, we find a sense of freedom and liberation.
It's like we're shedding the weight of our worries and anxieties,
Yeah.
allowing ourselves to kind of float on the surface of life's river
Yeah.
instead of constantly struggling against the current.
That's a beautiful image, and it reminds us that life isn't meant to be a constant battle.
Right.
It's meant to be enjoyed, to be savored, to be experienced fully with all of its imperfections and surprises.
And that enjoyment, that savoring, that full experience comes from a place of awareness.
Mm-hmm.
It's about being present in each moment,
Yeah.
paying attention to the sights, the sounds, the smells, the sensations that surround us.
It's about waking up to the beauty that's already present in our lives,
Yeah.
The beauty that we often miss because we're too busy chasing after something else.
So it's not about adding more things to our lives,
Right.
but rather about appreciating what we already have.
Exactly.
It's about shifting our focus from what's missing
Mm-hmm.
to what's already here.
And that shift in perspective can be incredibly transformative.
Yeah, it can. It can turn a mundane day into an adventure, a stressful situation into an opportunity for growth.
Mm-hmm.
a challenging relationship into
Yeah.
a source of deep connection.
It's about seeing the world through the eyes of a child.
Yeah.
With that sense of wonder and curiosity open to the magic and mystery that surrounds us.
And in that openness and that childlike wonder, we rediscover the joy of simply being alive.
I think that's a beautiful message to leave our listeners with.
Yeah.
This exploration of awareness through the lens of Alan Watts. The Wisdom of Insecurity has been so insightful. We've covered so much ground, from the illusion of separateness to the trap of time,
Right.
from the power of mindfulness to the importance of playfulness and humor.
And ultimately, it all comes back to this one central theme,
Yeah.
the transformative power of awareness.
Yeah.
By cultivating awareness, by becoming more present in our lives, we can break free from those cycles of anxiety and suffering that keep us trapped.
And discover a deeper sense of peace, joy, and fulfillment.
So as we conclude our deep dive today,
Okay.
I want to encourage our listeners to continue exploring these ideas, to experiment with the practices that Watts suggests,
Yeah.
and to see how cultivating awareness can transform their own lives.
It's a journey worth taking.
It really is. And as Watts himself so eloquently put it,
Yeah.
this is the real secret of life, to be completely engaged with what you are doing in the here and now. And instead of calling it work, realize it is play.
Beautiful.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. We hope you found it enlightening and inspiring.
Follow The Infinite Within with Cecilia to explore profound insights on pantheism. Embrace the oneness of existence and unlock the mysteries within you.